In Chapter 1, we meet Rose, a young woman with a fervent desire to become a beauty queen. With the unwavering support of her parents, Rose embarks on the journey of fulfilling her dreams by applying for a prestigious pageant. Along the way, she navigates challenges, including keeping her relationship with Kian a secret due to their differing backgrounds. Despite setbacks, Rose's determination and excitement propel her forward, culminating in her official candidacy for the pageant. However, just as everything seems to be falling into place, an unexpected event looms on the horizon, threatening to derail Rose's aspirations. Join us as we dive into Chapter 2 to uncover the twists and turns of Rose's journey towards achieving her dreams. Chapter 2. Can I take a break? Rose asked Sofia, one of her pageant preparation assistants. I don't feel good right now. I feel so sick, she added, managing her discomfort. They were in the middle of preparing for a photo shoot when Rose's sudden sickness forced her to request a pause. This marked her fourth session with Sofia over 2 months. Sofia, a former top model contracted by Rose's modeling agency to train aspiring models, was usually enjoyable to work with, but on this particular day, Rose wasn't feeling well and urgently needed more space and fresh air. Is that so? Sofia immediately became worried. You can take a rest for a while. Sofia and the glam team left the room to allow Rose to take a nap. They considered giving her medicine for the constant headache she had been experiencing for days, but decided against it. They couldn't administer any medication without her parents' consent since she was still a minor. As Rose lay down, she realized something that had been at the back of her mind for a while. She had been late for her period for the past few weeks. Oh my gosh, Rose whispered, frustratedly smacking her head lightly. This cannot be happening. What should I do? A wave of worry and anxiety washed over her as she tried to comprehend the possibility that she might be pregnant. Uncertain of how to proceed, Rose was left with a sense of urgency to seek guidance and support from someone she trusted. Rose was overwhelmed by the possibility that she might be carrying a child inside her. The constant sickness she had been experiencing and the absence of her period seemed to point to one answer: she might be pregnant. What should I do? She asked herself, panic and tears welling up in her eyes. I need to take a test. But how? She whispered, feeling lost and frightened. With no other option, Rose had to leave the photo shoot unfinished and head home. Luckily, no one questioned her abrupt departure, assuming she was simply tired from the intense workload. Unable to wait any longer, Rose decided to take matters into her own hands. Before the day even ended, she secretly left her house and called an Uber to take her to the nearest store to buy a pregnancy test. With her face covered by a mask and sunglasses, and her head concealed by a cap and thick jacket, she attempted to remain unnoticed. She knew her parents would be back home at 11 p.m., giving her enough time to return before they arrived. At the pharmacy, Rose received her change and thanked the lady cashier, her heart pounding with anxiety. She rushed home, her eyes glancing at her watch, realizing it was almost 11. The weight of the situation hung heavily on her shoulders as she anxiously prepared to take the test that would reveal her fate. Rose's heart sank as she nervously waited for the test result. Praying with all her might for it to be negative, she couldn't bear the thought of being pregnant at this point in her life. After what felt like an eternity, she finally gathered the courage to look at the test. Her worst fears were realized as she saw the 2 lines indicating a positive result. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and her world seemed to crumble around her. She felt a surge of panic and fear, knowing that her dreams were now in jeopardy. No, this can't be right. It must be wrong. Rose desperately pleaded, hoping against hope for a different outcome. She couldn't fathom the idea of becoming a mother at such a young age and giving up her dreams of becoming a beauty queen. As the reality of the situation sank in, Rose's cries intensified, and she found herself sitting on the floor, her knees weak from the overwhelming emotions. Hugging herself tightly, she tried to suppress her sobs, feeling lost and utterly devastated. All the happiness she had felt just days ago had vanished, replaced by the weight of uncertainty and fear. What am I going to do? I'm not ready for this. Please, don't let this be real. Rose's desperate cries echoed through the room as she grappled with the sudden and overwhelming realization that her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. As Rose struggled to stand up and compose herself, her phone rang. The sound startled her, and she quickly reached for the phone, hoping her parents wouldn't notice her distress. She knew they'd be home soon. She saw an unfamiliar number on the caller ID. The ringing phone added to her anxiety, and she decided not to answer it right away, needing some time to process everything that was happening. Her mind raced with thoughts of the future and the weight of the news she had just received. She knew she needed to find a way to face this situation, but at that moment, she felt overwhelmed and uncertain about what to do next. As she sat on the floor, still crying softly, Rose took a deep breath and tried to regain herself. The phone continued to ring, but she let it go to voicemail. It was Kian. Hi, Rose. Seems you busy. Rose knew she couldn't keep this to herself for long. As the call ended, Rose felt her heart shatter into pieces. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Kian, the person she loved and trusted, was ending their relationship because his parents had chosen a wife for him in Pakistan. It felt like her whole world was falling apart. Feeling numb and overwhelmed by everything that had happened, Rose sat on the floor, holding her phone tightly in her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she tried to process the two major pieces of news she had received in such a short time. Her mind was filled with confusion, sadness, and a sense of loss. Kian and his family had already moved back to Pakistan without her knowing, and now he was telling her that their relationship had to end because of this decision. It felt like she had been left behind, abandoned and heartbroken, unable to understand why everything was falling apart at once. In the midst of her pain, Rose also had to confront the reality of her own situation. She was facing an unplanned pregnancy and now had to deal with the end of her relationship with Kian. It felt like too much to bear. Feeling completely overwhelmed, Rose knew she couldn't handle this on her own. She needed the support and understanding of her parents, no matter how difficult it might be to share this with them. With trembling hands, she dialed her mother's number, hoping she would find the strength to open up about everything that had happened. As the phone rang, Rose's heart pounded in her chest. She knew she couldn't hide this any longer, and she needed her parents more than ever. The phone rang again, but her mother didn't pick it up. Rose thought of calling her father, but hesitated because he was most probably on the wheel. Instead, she decided to deal with her emotions on her own. Feeling overwhelmed, Rose wanted to scream to let out all the pain she had been feeling. But all she could do was cry silently, hugging herself in solitude. "Why me?" Rose whispered. Her heart was heavy with sorrow. She held on to her jacket tightly on the left side, as if trying to hold her own heart together, which felt like it was breaking into pieces. 10 minutes later, she heard a sound. It was the sound of the main door of their house opening. Her parents were home. Rose quickly got up, ran to the toilet, and washed her face, trying to compose herself. In a spark of thought, she decided she wouldn't be telling her parents about her pregnancy just yet. She felt too overwhelmed to face their reaction at that moment. Instead, she needed some time to process everything on her own. Rose tried to reach Kian to find some comfort, but when she dialed his number, she got a response showing that the number had been deactivated. It hit her then that Kian had indeed left the country, just as he had said. Feeling a mix of emotions, heartbreak, fear, and confusion, Rose found herself in a state of limbo. She was facing two life-altering situations at once, and she didn't know how to handle either of them. As the days went by, Rose grappled with her emotions and the gravity of her choices. She understood that hiding her pregnancy from her parents indefinitely wasn't feasible, yet she also required time to process everything independently. Amid this turmoil, Rose sought solace in introspection. She pondered her decisions, aspirations, and the road ahead. Despite her inner struggles, she acknowledged that evading her reality was unsustainable. In due course, Rose recognized the inevitability of confronting her parents and engaging in candid dialogue. Concealing her pregnancy wasn't viable, and she craved their support and counsel more than ever. Summoning her resolve, Rose steeled herself for the forthcoming conversation with her parents. She braced for the difficulty ahead, determined to address her pregnancy and the obstacles head-on. Embracing the challenge, she resolved to navigate this new chapter of life with courage and determination. "What are you saying?" Rose's mother's voice trembled with shock, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Are you pregnant?" Rose's heart raced at her mother's question, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. "I took the test, and it was positive," she admitted, her eyes avoiding her parents' gaze. Her father's voice, tinged with concern and confusion, added to the tension. "What's going on, Rose? Are you really pregnant?" The room filled with her mother's escalating voice, reaching a shout. "Rose, answer me. Are you?" "Yes." Rose interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "I am pregnant," she confessed. Her mother's shock turned into palpable disappointment. "What have you done, Rose? You're not allowed to get pregnant. You're young. I've worked so hard to help you reach your dreams, and all you've done is give me disappointment." Each word felt like a blow to Rose's spirit. "You got pregnant, and we didn't even know you had a boyfriend. Who is the father?" "I don't know." Rose's voice trembled. With Kian ending their relationship, she decided he couldn't be the father. "I'm sorry." Her mother's anger pushed her away as she tried to reach for her hand. "You're sorry? Is that all?" Her mother's tone was sharp with pain. "Do you realize the consequences? How will you take care of a child at your age? Your dreams, your future, it's all jeopardized now." Rose felt crushed by her mother's words. She never wanted to disappoint them, yet now she had. Lost, scared, and alone, she struggled to find her voice amidst her tears. Her father, silent until then, finally spoke, his disappointment evident. "Rose, we need to talk about this calmly. Your mother's right, you need to understand the gravity of the situation. We'll figure out what to do, but first, we need to know the truth about the father." "I don't know what to do, Dad," Rose sobbed. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to disappoint you both. We'll deal with this, but you need to be honest," her father said gently. "I will, Dad. I promise," Rose said, wiping her tears. "I'll tell you everything." In the turmoil, Rose knew she couldn't hide anything anymore. She had to face the consequences, no matter how difficult. The next morning, Rose woke up early, feeling a slight sense of relief now that her parents knew about her situation. The previous night, after her mother's outburst, Rose had been uncertain about how her parents would handle the news of her pregnancy. She hoped that their hearts would soften with time and understanding. As she made her way downstairs to the kitchen to get a glass of milk, Rose noticed her parents engrossed in a serious discussion. Her mother's tear-streaked face worried her, and she hesitated to interrupt. But her father called out to her, asking her to join them at the table. "Please, Mom and Dad, I am sorry," Rose said, her voice still carrying the weight of the emotional turmoil from the night before. "I am sorry for saying those harsh words to you yesterday," her mother said, her voice filled with remorse as she moved her chair closer to Rose's. Feeling a glimmer of hope, Rose reached out and held her mother's hands. Her mother responded by gently squeezing her hands back. In that moment, the rift between them began to heal, and Rose felt a sense of comfort and reassurance. "Will I be punished?" Rose asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her father, who had remained silent until now, pulled his chair closer and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Rose, your mother and I have something very important to tell you," he said, his voice calm yet serious. Rose looked at her parents, trying to read their expressions. She felt a mix of anxiety and curiosity, wondering what they were about to reveal. "My dear child," Rose's father held her hands, his face filled with sorrow. For the next 20 minutes, Rose's parents explained to her the difficult situation their family was facing. They shared their financial struggles and the challenges their business was going through due to the crisis. Rose's father admitted that they never wanted to burden her with their problems, but circumstances had forced them to be open. Rose's mother joined in, explaining that their immigration process, which had started years ago when they arrived in the United States, was still pending. They had received a letter from their lawyer stating that to continue the process, they needed to leave the country and concluded at the U.S. consulate in Manila. This news came as a shock to Rose, who had no idea about the status of their immigration. Their lawyer had managed to secure a waiver of the typical 3 to 10-year ban for overstaying their visa, but they had to leave the United States before proceeding. Rose's father, trying to remain strong, assured her that he would accompany them to the Philippines to help with the necessary paperwork. He believed the process would be expedited as they had a strong case and supportive new lawyers. "We can return within a month," Rose's father said, trying to offer some hope. "But Dad..." Rose started to speak, her mind racing with all the implications of this news. "The pageant is in 6 weeks," her mother interjected, understanding her concerns. She explained that participating in the pageant with their current immigration situation could jeopardize Rose's chances and lead to disqualification. "We want the best for you, and this decision will ensure that your dreams aren't hindered." Rose's father added that while they had the option to prolong their stay in the USA, the urgency of Rose's current situation required them to go to the Philippines. Rose comprehended the gravity of the situation, but she hadn't fully decided what to do yet.
And that concludes this chapter of Jane. What twists and turns await our characters next? Subscribe to our channel for updates on future chapters, and join the conversation in the comments below. And don't miss out on the excitement coming up in the next chapter. If you've enjoyed the story so far, consider sharing it with your friends and family. You can find the book on Amazon via the link in the description. Support us by offering the book as a gift to your loved ones. Until next time, happy reading,